Hi guys, it's Jake. We're back in for another YouTube video, and this is kind of a little different intro. We're going to be putting the STI steering rack in my Forester today, but I just wanted to say that this is not a set stone installation guide. This is just me working on the car. Hopefully you guys can still learn a little bit from this, but it did not go into extreme depth. So if you guys are doing something similar to your car, maybe this will help you out. I hope so, but don't expect it to, be a straightforward guide. And just before we get into it, my car has the engine out of it, so I had a lot easier time removing the old subframe because obviously the engine was not on top of it. But an easy solution for that is just to lift your engine and transmission up with a cherry picker and basically simulate the same thing. So with that out of the way, don't forget to drop a like, hit that subscribe button. We got a lot of cool content coming soon, so you won't want to miss it, but I'll let you guys see the video now. Today we are fooling with some steering racks. So we have a 15 plus STI steering rack here that I got from Lee C Parts. I'll put his stuff in the description. And right here is actually a right hand drive steering rack from Japan. This actually came with all the parts that I got when I bought my whole transmission swap. And I also have the subframe for that. And then this is the sway bar off of the Forester STI stuff, which is a little bit bigger, I believe, than the stock one, but we'll definitely come back to that to make sure. And this piece right here is actually something that is a lot different with the JDM subframe. So the Forester STI subframe has this brace here, and I'm maybe just assuming because all the Forester STIs came with the 6-speed, and the 6-speed is a lot heavier, so maybe this, helped brace it, because the 6-speed basically kind of just sits on the subframe a little bit. So maybe that's what that is for, but nonetheless, we're gonna put the right-hand drive subframe in the United States Forester. So let me go inside here and I'll show you guys that part. I've already kind of messed with the 15 rack to try to get it in that subframe, but I haven't figured too much out. I just know I need to cut a little bit off of the rack. I've been reading up on blingstrom.com, and I believe he has a Forester and an STI. And he does, forums and stuff and installation instructions and all that good stuff for these kind of parts. So I'll put his information in the description, but he has done a great job explaining what exactly needs to happen to make it all work. What I don't know is that my subframe is a JDM subframe, so it might be a little bit different. The real reason why I want to put that subframe in there is because of that piece, that extra bracing, and we're gonna be making a lot of power, so it'll probably help. But let's go inside and take a look at this subframe, the right-hand drive one. So here's the right-hand drive subframe. The front of this is actually the front of the car, and these are where the motor mounts sit. So everything should be bolt right up. It's just to get the steering rack through this hole, because on the JDM one, it came through this hole and went backwards. So when I mock fitted it a little bit, we need to cut out a little bit of this area here to make that rack be able to go up at the correct angle and bolt into this thing right. But let me show you the difference in the JDM one. So this bracket right here, where you see these studs coming out, this is not on the United States one, and that is where that brace bolts up. So it's on both sides, and that's where that brace bolts up that I showed you guys. But yeah, that's the difference. And then the plate goes over here, and you guys will be able to see it a little bit more as I get it together. I mean, here is where the sway bar bolts in. It's kind of hard to understand now, but as we get it together, you guys will be able to learn a little bit more about it. So I'm gonna actually put you guys in a little time lapse, and I'm gonna cut out this piece. Then we'll go ahead and test fit the STI 15 plus STI rack in here again to see if we've got it any better. So let's go ahead and do that. You can see I have this cut out here, and I got you guys on a little time lapse there to check out how I did it. I kind of etched it with the zip wheel, and then I went behind it with a jigsaw, and I cut it straight here, and I cut it around the corner there, and so that way it would be a little easier with the angle. And then I also just went right around this corner. But now I have this tool here, which is just a carbide bit to kind of clean up the rough edges. because I think I've cut enough now. So I'm gonna use this, clean up these edges, and then we'll go test fit the STI rack back into this subframe, see how it fits. All right, so I cleaned the edges up right here where I had cut the subframe. So now I'm gonna go ahead and try to fit this STI rack into this subframe here. So it's gonna take a little bit of finagling to get it in there exactly right. I just want to make sure I've cut out enough, and then we can see from there. Because I know I'm gonna need some spacers here to make it all work. I read that on Langstrom's form there, but yeah, it actually fits in there pretty well now. Looks like I cut like right about the perfect amount. Couldn't have really cut any less and couldn't have cut any more. I mean, I could have cut more, but obviously it wouldn't be helping anything. It would just be, you know, taking more rigidity out of the subframe, which we don't want to do. So yeah, now the only issue is, I'm not sure if you can see it, but these lines, they hook up to the power steering right here, and this is the bracket that I was telling you about that has where this piece goes. So only issue is with that piece on there, these brackets right here, these lines have to go down in there. Now I'm thinking that if it was all together, it'd be fine right where it is, but to get it all together, I might have to grind off this little edge here a little bit to get these lines past this little piece. So just so you can see it right here, these lines hook on down in there, and that's where I believe you're gonna need some help. So also, let's look at this real quick. You see, here's the bracket to hold down the steering, so we could put that under there just to see how it fits. It actually fits pretty damn well. So I think I am gonna need some spacers. I read that online. All in all, it's actually not that bad. All right guys, so I decided to figure out what kind of spacing I need. There's an area down here that you can see under this mounting bracket that needs a little spacer. So I decided to figure out how much spacer I needed. I tightened down the other three that are gonna work, which are just these two and that one. And now I'm just gonna put something in there to try to measure it to the correct spacing in between these two pieces right here, so that when I bolt it down, the actual rack is level in the subframe. So that's the goal right now, and then we'll worry about this bracket right here. So we have the steering rack still sitting there. I was looking for a little spacer piece, but I realized that once we put the spacer in there, which here is what I have, and here is our stock bolt here. Now what I realized is once this goes through here, there's not gonna be enough threads there. There might be one or two that grab down there. So we want something that's gonna grab a little more and be more secure. So I went and got a Yamaha bolt, and as you can see here, it's about 3 threads longer. So that will go down in there a little bit better and make sure that it is held on good. So we're gonna use that bolt, and I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing in here, and then we'll see about cutting this little bracket out right here. So you can see I have that little spacer in there, and it actually bolted up really well. So I just kind of did that to test fit it, and it looks actually really level sitting in the subframe. Let's see if we get a side angle on it. Yeah, so looks really level sitting in there. And if we flip it over, you can see that the rack isn't really hitting anywhere. All right guys, before I cut this, I wanted to show you where I marked it. So this has to be cut because of these lines right here. They both hit it. So as you get into the job, you'll figure that out. But here is what I eyeballed as to how much needs to be cut. So it's gonna take a little bit of rigidity out of this bracket, I know, but on the front side here, we also have some welds. So you can see it has a hole on this side. We have welds on the front, on the side, and the back. So I'm pretty sure that bracket has a lot of rigidity, and cutting this out will only take a little bit out, and it'll still be plenty enough for what we gotta do. So I'm gonna cut that out of there real quick with the die grinder and the cutting tool. So I'll cut that out and then we'll try to fit this thing in here and see how it looks. All right guys, so you can see I cut the little bracket off here. The rest of the bracket over here, you can see where it hadn't been cut off. Here's the little piece. If you guys are wondering how much it was, it went right there. Now we're gonna see if we can test fit this piece in here and see if we have enough clearance for these lines. If not, we're gonna have to take off a little bit more material. But yeah, let's go for it. All right, so we have the rack in here. As you can see, we definitely made enough room for this top line, but this bottom line is still hitting a little bit on the edge of this bracket. So what I'm gonna do is just chop the edge of that bracket off just a little bit more, just so that way we can get some clearance for this line here. And then we'll actually bolt it up for the last time to get it on. So yeah, stay tuned, we'll get that done, we'll bolt it down and we'll show you guys. All right guys, I know this video has been a little bit backwards. We got the subframe all rigged up with the 2015 Plus STI steering rack, and that's good that you guys know how to do that now. So now that we have all that rigged up in our new subframe, you guys might be wondering, how do you get your old one out? So I'm gonna show you guys how to do that now. We have to do something to support the transmission, so I'm probably gonna put a bottle jack underneath the transmission here, and then I unhooked a whole bunch of stuff last night to make it happen. So we took off these L braces, and they're just a whole bunch of bolts. So we have a couple 17mm bolts and a couple 14mm bolts on the front, and they go down about to the driver's side door and the passenger side door. And so then we have the tie rod ends right here that come off the steering rack on each side, and then we have the sway bar end links right here that we have to unhook. And then we can also see the control arm hanging down. So there's just one cross bolt that goes through that hole, and then two bolts that hold it to the chassis on here. Then you can rotate it sideways, and we have unhooked that on both sides. I believe it was a 12mm on the sway bar, 19mm on the tie rod end link, and 17 and 19mm on the control arm. So now that all that stuff's out, the only thing holding the subframe in the car now is just this connector piece that connects the power steering to the actual steering rack. So that's like a little adapter piece there. And then we just have some studs coming down from these holes that go all the way down through. And then there's a nut on the bottom side of this subframe in either 2 or 3 places. So I gotta get those out of there. And then what we're gonna do is support the transmission with a bottle jack, and then lower the subframe down slowly and then pull it forward. And then now that we have our new subframe dressed, we can just do the same thing with this, but in opposite order. So yeah, sorry again, this video is kind of backwards, but still gonna do my best to show you guys everything that needs to happen to put this STI rack in your Forester or your GD STI. So stay tuned, keep you guys up to date. So we have the steering knuckle here unhooked. I just took this little 12mm out first, and then I loosened the one up top right here. So then I could slide it up the shaft a little bit and get that off of here. Now I wanted to show you what's going on down here before I go ahead and loosen these up. Right here, you can see up there is what connects the subframe to the actual frame. And you see there's a nut right here, right there, and a nut right there, and it's the same on both sides. So after we unhook the control arm and all the steering, tie rod ends, sway bar, the only thing holding the hub up is the axle and the strut. So that's what it should be like. And then I'm gonna use this long extension right here on an air impact, and we're gonna just run those things down. And as you can see, we have the subframe supported with that jack there, and we also have the transmission supported with that jack as well. Unfortunately couldn't find a bottle jack, but the roll around jack will have to do. So I'm gonna loosen those up, and then we'll slowly drop the subframe out. I might try to get a little time lapse for you guys, but it's gonna be really hard for me to get that just because of where this is located on the car. So if not, we'll catch you guys in the next clip. Got the old subframe out, and I just raised the new one up. It was kind of hard for me to get a time lapse. I was hanging my GoPro on the ABS module here, but I got this thing, dropping it out. We just put the new one up, Haven't put the nuts on the bottom to hold it yet, but here's what it looks like. We got the STI steering rack in the right-hand drive subframe here, and you guys can tell went up real nice and easy. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and bolt this thing up. The only other issue that we're gonna run into is that the tie rod ends on the STI rack are a little bit wider. So I believe we're gonna have to cut about, maybe not a ½ inch, but maybe a little less than that off of each side of the tie rod ends. But I'm gonna wait to do that until we start to put the car back together a little bit. So yeah, we got it all done. I'm gonna bolt it back up. All right guys, if you guys made it this far in the video, I truly appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back in future videos as the build progresses along to show you guys what we do with the lines and how we cut the tie rod ends. But this is gonna conclude the video for today. So like I said, thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, we'll be back for more soon, and see you then.